Good day, friends. This is Attorney Robert West. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. The topic of this video is Supreme Court supports torture. I know it sounds a little dramatic, but give me a few minutes to explain. I guarantee you'll see where I'm coming from shortly. But before we start, I want to thank all the new viewers to the channel. Really appreciate that. Always, you can feel free to comment, like, and share. If you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, please do so. Free of charge, helps the channel grow, gets the information out to more people. All right, let's get into this. So why do I say they support torture? Well, the main reason, the number one reason, is as you saw if you've watched before a previous video about the Trump regime trying to send 8 people to South Sudan. As I went through it at the time, the U.S. State Department has a travel advisory not to go there because it's a very, very dangerous place. Okay? They have an armed conflict going on. They're telling U.S. citizens not to go there. So, federal judge put a halt to that for various reasons. And that's what most people anticipated when it went up on appeal and eventually made it to the Supreme Court. That was going to be the decision. Why? Because we have this little treaty called the Convention Against Torture. We are not allowed to send people to places that they can be tortured. That's why Kilmar Abrego Garcia had a protective order not to send them to El Salvador. They sent him to El Salvador, and now we found out he was tortured and beaten and mistreated terribly. So that was a violation of the Convention Against Torture. Now comes the Supreme Court, who, by the way, Donald Trump seems to have on their speed dial. The Supreme Court never takes all these cases. Never. Never. But with a person like Trump, who I would call a vexatious litigant, they keep taking these cases and they seem to completely ignore due process, equal protection, the Convention Against Torture Treaty. They just ignore it. And most of the time, they won't even sign their names to it. Why? Because they know what they're doing is wrong. They're just horrible, horrible people. That's it. These are the kind of people that if you see them get into an accident, you just keep driving. You don't call 911. You don't call no help. Nothing. They don't deserve it. They're scum of the earth. That's how they behave. The only 2 of the justices on the Supreme Court were actually real judges. And when I say real judges, I mean trial court judges. And those were on the liberal side. On the conservative side, no. These people are so separated and insulated from reality. They're like 10 degrees of separation. They don't have a clue what the hell's going on in the real world. Not a clue. They make up stuff. They find ways to deny stuff that should be approved and approve the stuff that should be denied. Now, you send people to a war zone, and what do you expect? Now, I'm not saying you can't deport these people because they legitimately, from what I've seen, have legitimate removal orders from the country. But you can't send them to a freaking war zone. These people have to be able to live wherever you send them. They have to be able to survive. And how are they going to survive if you put them in a war zone? You send them to South Sudan. You send them to Libya. You send them to Panama. Panama is safer. You send them to Costa Rica. Costa Rica is safer. But South Sudan and Libya, Rwanda, where our own government on their own government website has travel warnings and are warning Americans not to go to these places. And yet, somehow, some way, because you're removing them from the country, they're allowed to be subjected to all types of horrors. That is crap. Anybody who is a decent moral person knows that's wrong. Unfortunately, these people do not know it's wrong because they're scum of the earth. That's who these people are. That's who they are. When they had their hearings to become Supreme Court justices, they lied their butts off. We respect precedent. No, we're not messing with anything. As soon as they got the chance, took away a woman's right to choose nationwide. As soon as they got the chance. Case after case. They ignore due process. They ignore equal protection. They ignore a treaty the United States is a party to. And let the Trump administration go forward. I'm starting to think, does Donald Trump have something on every one of these justices? Can they possibly be that horrible? Yeah, I think they can be that horrible. This is exactly what the Republicans have been doing. They don't think that human beings should have health care unless their employer gives it to them. They want to give big tax breaks to the rich at the expense of the poor and the working class people. That's what this bill was just about that they passed, that Trump signed into law today. So, yeah, they're promoting torture because you damn well better believe there's going to be people that we send there to these horrible places that are going to get tortured. These are not safe places to send these people. In the past, what we would do, we would monitor them, let them out of custody, let them get a work permit, and when the day came that we could send them back, that's to their home countries, that's when we would send them back. Donald Trump doesn't want to do that. He wants to get the big check mark in the deportation box. So he will do anything and everything to deport people, no matter where it is. He never did care. He even said at a rally yesterday that he hates Democrats. Think about this. He's the president of the United States. There are millions and millions of registered Democrats in this country, along with Republicans, independents, and other parties like libertarians, Green Party, whatever. But he went out of his way to say he hates Democrats. What does that tell you? What does it tell you about this man? It tells you a lot. If you're part of the cult, you just, whatever he says, if he came out and said, we need to start killing small children who are disabled because they're no use to society, these people would start shaking their head. Yeah, we need to do that. That's the kind of person Donald Trump is. And this Supreme Court is cut from the same cloth. They don't care about due process that much. They pretend a little bit more than Trump does. But when it comes down to it, they ignore it. They ignore equal protection. And now they're ignoring the convention that we signed, the treaty that we signed, the Convention Against Torture. So now we're going to send people to places they're going to get tortured. Exhibit A, Abrego Garcia. He was tortured. He was beaten. He was starved. Okay? He was degraded and humiliated. The fact that he got out of CCOT prison is a miracle. Doesn't mean he's going to get to stay in the country because they have it in for this guy, And they're using a guy who has a legitimately way worse record to be the star witness. So, but would they send Abrego Garcia to Libya, Rwanda, or South Sudan? Abso-freaking-lutely they would. Without hesitation, without any remorse whatsoever, because these people are lawless. This is what a lot of people voted for. And when they come back now and say, well, I didn't vote for that and I didn't vote for this, the man telegraphs every move he makes. I'm a peace president. Ukraine war still going on. No ceasefire. And he cut our allies' weapons shipments down in the Ukraine. I'm a peace president. He bombs Iran. Illegally bombs Iran. Okay? I'm not going to touch Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. That bill that he just signed does just that for all three programs. In fact, it also touches the Affordable Care Act because he's cutting the subsidies of that bill. That bill cuts the subsidies. So if, let's say, with your subsidy, you were paying $50 a month for your health insurance, they remove the subsidy, the $300-400 subsidy. Now you might have to pay $400 or $500 a month. Guess what? You're not going to be able to get health care because you probably make too much for Medicaid and you don't make enough to cover the cost. That's why they say about 17 million people will lose their health care coverage. And these Republicans are super sneaky people. The tax cut's immediate, but a lot of these really bad things, they don't kick into 2027 after the 26 elections. Why is that? Well, why do you think that is? So they can say, see, it didn't happen. Nothing happened. These people lie about everything. Oh, no tax on tips. Yeah. 1, you have to have a W-2 job. 2, there's a cap at $25,000. And 3, it has to be a cash tip. Guess what? Most people today use cards. So it's not going to affect very many people. No Social Security tax that keeps claiming was in the bill, never was in the bill. Never was in the bill. No tax on overtime. There's tax on overtime. So he gets people to believe his lies. They only watch certain news sources who are not even considered news sources. They're more of entertainment than news. I'm talking about Fox News, talking about Newsmax, etc., just those kinds of places. And these people just listen to this bullshit. That's what they do. That's what they do. So, yeah, people are going to be tortured because of this. And most likely, just like Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel, the International Criminal Court will put out a warrant for people in this administration's arrest. And you know what? You might not like this, but some president down the road might actually take these people into custody and turn them over because that's what they deserve for doing the things that they're doing. These people know that they know the difference between right and wrong. They just don't care. This is an opportunity for them, opportunity to make money. Stephen Miller, Tom Homan, the biggest yelling guys about deportation. They have a financial interest. The more people get deported, the more money that goes in their pocket. They have investments that are in this industry. So there you go. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all smoke and mirrors. So if you're still with me, I appreciate you staying. Give me the chance to explain why the Supreme Court supports torture against a treaty that we did sign, against a treaty that many countries signed. But keep in mind, do not be surprised if many countries in the future on their websites tell their citizens not to come here. There's a travel warning. It's too dangerous to come here. The Olympics shouldn't be here. The World Cup should not be here. We are not a welcoming place anymore for for tourists. We're just not. If they were smart, they'd pull it and go put it somewhere else. Go put it somewhere where they treat you reasonably. Go to Europe, go to Canada, go somewhere else. You shouldn't come here. But, it is what it is. All right, friends, that's it for this one. I hope I was able to be clear about why the Supreme Court supports torture. I don't think there's any question that they do based on their ruling. But we're stuck with them for a while, but maybe not forever. Have a good 4th of July. Be safe for those of you who are Americans and permanent residents and visa holders who live here. Fireworks can be very dangerous. Better go to a show rather than blowing off your own fireworks. Too many people every year blow off fingers, hands, etc. It's not worth it. It's not worth it to see a few sparkly things in the air. Have a good one, guys. We'll see you in the next one.